right, so we are going to be going over the Emperor's Children Rites of War. We've previously went over just about everything else for this Legion, so we're going to go back over their Rites of War and all. We're going to start with a brief refresher of either one. It's been a while since you've looked them over or watched our other video or listened to our podcast about it, but also just to make sure that people are all on the same page with these guys. So just very quickly, broadly going over their Legion trait, flawless execution. So when they charge, they get to hit at one higher initiative step, and this is after all other modifiers. So famously, these guys can have Power Fists at initiative 2. Their vehicles get +1 on defensive weapons because obviously their vehicles aren't charging things. Their advanced reaction is when you're about to get charged, we both essentially roll off on our charges. If you don't beat me, I charge you instead. Otherwise, if you are going to make your charge, if your charge is better than mine, I get to shoot you. And then we have 2 rites of war that we're getting into. To go through this, we're going to have to talk about some of the units briefly again. We're going to do that, though, when it comes up. So, I think Steve had the first one, the Maru Skara.
The Maru Skara. So essentially, this is the Emperor's children flaunting how perfectly they execute their battle plan. Um, so it's kind of a coordinated assault kind of deal. So they could take some units, throw them in reserves, and they have complete control of when things arrive because they're just so perfect. So we're gonna start off with the limitations on the rights of war. That way, before you get too excited with an idea, it's like, hold on, that's not possible. Because I know I have many times gone to right of war, like, oh my god, oh. Wait. So if the Mauskar are, sorry, Maru Skara, the limitations are you cannot include any models, the movement characteristic of 0, or slow or bombard units in this detachment. First and foremost of that, the 0 movement, that's going to mean you cannot use any drop pods, for example, for your veteran squads or your Terminators. Bombard is going to be things such as, I want to say the Legion Typhon. Their indirect fire thing, almost certainly. But basically, like, you're missing the indirect fire stuff with that. You can't do slow stuff, which is some of the heavier tanks. Um, and then, no more than half the total number of units in a detachment in the Rite of War may be assigned to flanking assaults, subterranean assaults, or otherwise held in reserves. So, half your units have to be on the table, and then the other half may be in reserve. Do remember that a unit and their transport count as 2, and independent characters are still their own unit as well. So if you have, say, your Praetor riding with the squad inside of a breacher drill, that is 3 units. You have to counterbalance with units already on the. And then the last limitation they have is that you must take a Legion Centurion, Cataphractii Centurion, or Tartarus Centurion with the Legion Champion or Phoenix Warden console upgrade. Let's quickly touch on the Phoenix Warden. It's essentially a Palatine Blade, but a boss man character. It's 30 points. You get the skill unmatched rule, and you get living icons special rule, and you gain a Phoenix power weapon and an Iron Halo. And then the skill match is basically just adopt a special stance that just is like, yeah, I'm totally gonna have the right fighting form for whatever it is. So either extra weapon skill for attacking, extra weapon skill for being attacked, or who needs weapon skill? I'm gonna do a ton of attack. And living icons gives you plus. Basically, it's like a Vexilla but an aura, but it doesn't stack with Vexilla. Legion champions, they always must accept challenges. They gain a Paragon Blade. If you're in a challenge with them, your unit is fearless for the round. Little things like that. So you have to take one of those, and then either a Praetor or a Delegatus to unlock Rites of War in general. So you're eating up 2 HQ slots off the bat. So for the effects, up to 4 units that you select as an elite, troop, or fast attack that do not have heavy, slow, or bombard as a unit subtype, they could gain the outflank rule. So, for example, you say, "Oh yeah, this assault marine squad, they're outflanking," or this tactical squad in a rhino is going to outflank. Um, You could put Tardos Terminators
Yup.
inside of a Land Raider and outflank that too, if you wanted to. Like, you have a lot of flexibility as to what goes in. Just can't do Cataphracti, can't do Breachers, but that's not bad. It's 4 units that are outflanking that couldn't before. Potentially 8 when you include the transports and such, but that's not. And then all of your units that are deployed on the battlefield at the start of the game gain +1 movement until you bring in your reserves. I don't know how long that's going to last. Actually, you do, because your plans are flawlessly executed. Because you do not make reserves rolls for anything that's in a flanking assault or a subterranean assault. Instead, you could just choose, you know what? I think it's time for them to arrive. And then suddenly you have a termite assault drill, bam, pop out of the ground exactly when you need it. Or you have your flanking units fly on from the edges. Deep strike assaults, which are going to be available essentially to your assault marines, still have to roll because they're not part of the perfectly coordinated aspect of this. So if you have a assault squad in deep strike, for example, there is still some unknown as to how long the +1 move. And because it's +1 movement characteristic, that does mean that if those units haven't come on yet, your basic Marines are movement 8, and they're getting a +1 to their charge roll. Because they then bump over that threshold. So you're basically a fake white scar with this Rite of War, which is pretty cool. And that's the basic idea of it. Here is a force, it's kind of a bait, and aha, you have sprung my trap. Everyone comes in and encircles the prey and just rips them apart. The Maru Skara means killing cut, so it's one of those,
So,
you know? It's
question
the
on this.
patient
So the
hunter.
last part, you don't make your reserve rolls, you choose when they come in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have to choose in turn 2 and 3? Yeah.
So you can't come in turn
Yeah, that's what I was
1.
going to say. The way it's
Technically, wait
written,
till
because
turn
normally
5, the way this
on
is written.
reserves, it's roll and it says they reserves. It says they automatically come in like turn 4.
They automatically succeed.
Oh,
But
okay, that's what it is. That's what I was wondering.
the roll is successful automatically on turn 4.
Yes,
But
that's
you
what I
don't
was
roll at
curious
all with this
about.
Rite
What
of
I
War.
was wondering in terms of their wording. Yeah, to me, I'm not saying you want to wait till turn 5, but yeah, the way this is worded, I think you absolutely could. GW may FAQ that at some point. So depending on when you're listening to this, I'll put in a note if that ever does change. But
Because I'm just double checking now. At the start of game turn
yep,
4, all reserve rolls are considered to automatically succeed.
yeah,
But
I
you
was looking
don't
it up too.
roll,
Yeah,
so if you
so
want,
since
you
you're
can
not
stay
actually
off
rolling,
board.
you don't have to auto have success that roll, so you could wait. Depending on where things are coming out. Like I said, let's say you're doing the flanking assault. Let's go off of that for a second. Your opponent knows the point that you're attempting to come from. Maybe you need a little bit more time to whittle them down, or maybe what you're coming in with, because you can choose from your troops, you can give them outflank special rule. You could do that. So maybe there's your scoring units. Maybe you don't care about the other stuff. Everyone else is doing a good job. Your scoring units are the ones you're waiting on. I'm going to wait till a little bit later for them to come in, to come grab my objectives or whatever it is I'm trying to do. Even if you're not trying to be, spicier with it and it being something that wants to hit.
Mm-hmm. It's a Rite of War that plays the way it works in lore.
Yes.
You need a battle
Oh
plan
yeah.
in
You
order
have
flawlessly
to.
execute your
I mean, you
battle.
have to pick some things ahead of time, obviously, for this, but you have to make a lot of very big decisions early because you have to have the actual plan. Like, what are you keeping off? Why are you keeping it off? Where you're going to bring it in? Why is it useful? And since you have 4 choices,
Luckily, you can change
yes,
that plan game to game, though, which is good. It's not like when you write your list, you say, "Aha, this unit will
yes,
outflank." It's when you're
that is true. Yeah.
deploying, you know what, they'll outflank.
Which in some ways
So there
is
is
tougher
flexibility
because then you
to it.
actually have to understand better what you're looking at.
You have to
You
think at the
can't be like, oh,
table.
I made a bad choice ahead of time. Like, no, you're going
Yeah.
to make a bad choice right now because you don't know
This is
enough.
fun. Well, then clearly you were not ready to
You weren't
perform a
perfect, and they hate you for it.
perfect battle plan.
Dare you? You weren't perfect. You
How
deserve
about
to
this
fail,
third
sir.
company elite?
Yeah, these are pretty cool. All right, so third company elite. So the limitations are the Rite of War can only be used by a detachment with the Traitor Allegiance. You'll see why in a couple seconds. And all models with the character, unit, subtype, and a detachment using this Rite of War must have the surgical augment either bought or as an upgrade
Or
or
using the Rite of War.
bought separately. Wait, must have. Yeah, or using the Rite of War. Yeah. So they must have a surgical augment. So the effects are Cacophony squads may be taken as troops in a detachment using this Rite of War. Any unit composed entirely of models with both the Emperor's Children special rule and the infantry unit type, part of this detachment, may select a single surgical augment at 30 points per unit. All models in the unit must be given the same surgical augment. So, let's refresh on what cacophonies are. If you remember, cacophonies were these 150 point units with a 36-inch Strength 6 AP5, Assault 3, Gets Hot, Pinning, Shell Shock, Deflagrate weapon. And we were basically
Fun.
like, it's. What happened?
Fun.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's
a lot of
it's a
dice.
great weapon. Sucks that it's great hots because you have to like roll them in batches, but it's a very good weapon. It's an excellent fire support weapon. Now you can take these as troops. Okay, not line, but as troops. But I think the more important thing about this is the entire unit can take a surgical augment for 30 points. So if you remember these surgical augments, we didn't really care about the Sonic lens. I think we all kind of said it sucked. But the big ones were either the Sonic Shriekers, which was -1 penalty to all hit rolls, and the Subsonic Pulsar, which is you ignore the penalties to leadership and ballistic skill for night fighting. I think it doesn't ignore range though. Let me just really quick.
Augury scanner unlocks range ignore.
Range.
So if you have an augury scanner, you ignore everything.
Exactly. And let me just check real quick. I don't think cacophonies can take auguries, but it's always nice to check the kid out. All right, so I like this because beforehand it was really only the sergeant that could get this augment for 20 points, right? And so if the sergeant got sniped out or the sergeant died, then really that 20-point investment kind of fell away. And we were kind of talking, I remember talking about this, and it was very much like, hey, it's 20 points. That's a lot for one dude, especially like on a sergeant, right? However, 30 points for the entire unit to get it, that's a slightly different argument, in my opinion. 30 points, giving them all Sonic Shriekers, doesn't matter if you snipe out my sergeant, that unit's -1 to be hit.
Yeah.
Period.
And keep in mind, with this limitation, it does say all models that are character unit subtype must have an augment. So yeah, everything's getting it.
So it's at least a 20 to 30 point tax on every infantry in the army.
True, but you were still I remember we were still talking about like giving the surgical augments like subsonic pulsars to Devastator squads or heavy support squads, or like the cacophony squads anyway, or giving the Sonic Shriekers.
Cacophony always have Sonic Shriekers.
Oh yes, that's good. But what I'm saying is like you were gonna kind of give this to your sergeant anyway because -1 to hit penalty in close combat is really, really good, right? That switch from hitting on 4s to 5s, right? Or let's say your weapons go 5, from 5s to 6s is ridiculously phenomenal.
I've watched a lot of Emperor's Children's games go down in my game store. It's huge. Like, so I cannot express enough.
Now, but what I'm saying is
how much Sonic Shriekers make Emperor's Children.
But this is what I'm saying. Like before, it was 20 points on a single sergeant. Right? Let's say you don't even give him an art. Let's say you
and now for 10 more points, the squad gets it, and now you can't take it away.
Before, sergeant, right? What's artificer armor for a sergeant? 10 points?
Yeah.
And let's give him a goddamn power fist, whatever. 10 other points. So you're investing 40 points into one model that can be sniped out. Versus now, you're spending 10 more points. That entire unit gets that. Now, mind you, I also want to point something out. I know we shat on Sonic Lance, but now that I'm thinking about it, imagine a squad of 20 track Marines with Sonic Lances.
And that's about it, because one guy doesn't do much. But if you have a unit, now you can actually get something done. Yes.
Yeah, as long as their toughness is 5 or less. And you are really good at rolling 6s. So you could make any unit in the game have any infantry in your list have a template weapon that's breaching on a 6 and pinning. So it's cool, I guess. You could attach an apothecary or another character that has a sonic shrieker for the other defense, and then you get both charge defenses, both the sonic lance with the pinning
And
and
Sonic
the minus
Yes,
one
you
to
can.
hit.
Can you pin a charging squad?
Yes.
Oh yeah, put this like
Yes.
pick a breacher squad, 30 points, give them 20, 20 template weapons. Jesus, 20 D3.
40.
So Dave, you're gonna have to do the math right. So 20 D3, the average is what? 40
40.
hits.
So
40
about
hits.
6 to 7.
And then out of that,
on average,
1/6
it's
of
between
them.
6 and 7. It's a little closer to 7 than it's 6.
And pinning is, I believe, leadership. I don't think any of them have access to fear or anything.
No, but not all. The Legion Herald does, but that's
Okay, okay, but like, there's no warlord trait that's like,
No,
oh,
no.
Okay, I just want to check. No, but like, listen, that's more meme though. It's Sonic Lance. Listen, Sonic Lance still sucks. Amazing. It still sucks bad. But again, getting an entire unit for an extra 10 points instead of one model for 20, 100%. I love this right. And what was I don't even remember the fucking limitation. That's how funny this is. What was the stupid limitation?
Oh,
Yeah,
trainers
you
only.
have to take these
Trader-
upgrades.
Characters must have Sonic
That becomes a
somethings.
thing.
Okay.
No, honestly,
mean-
it's a legitimate
Oh, no.
constraint because your unit, you're spending a minimum 20 to 30 points for everything that you put in this army. So you are absolutely squads down. Your squads are better depending on your choice. Like I said, I think Sonic Shriekers are great because that's charge or get charged. However, you are going to be a unit or more down from your opponent because of the extra points you have to spend on everything. So I'm not saying it dissuades a person, but this makes you. It says company elite. You are going to be an elite army. You're not going to have that many guys.
I don't know. I feel like it's a really good. I do like it.
It is fun. It's very simple. It's very fun. Just understand you'll be playing down a unit or two. That said, it's kind of worth it if you run a lot of Sonic Shriekers.
And you want to be in melee. Your Legion rule is I charge you. I'm going to hit you first. In general, equal versus equal. I'm going to hit you first, and whatever's left is going to have a much tougher time even attempting to hurt me. So I'm going to survive combats a whole lot better, even better than when I was hitting you first. However, like I said, I'm going to have less stuff, which means if you're really good at shooting me down before I get there, I'm going to have a bad day. It takes a Legion that kind of has a somewhat mono focus because of what their special stuff does and turns them absolutely into a mono tactic. You are charging. That is essentially your goal. Get into combat. Your cacophony, sure, but like everything else probably wants to. You can cheapen it up, quote unquote, cheapen it up since your cacophony can be troops. And scoring right now is not as big since only 2 of the missions actually put down objectives. It's not as important, but they already have their upgrade, so they're not going to get more expensive. So you can semi-save some points. Yeah.
They're
more expensive. They're 150 for 5 guys, but you know the cost for them. You're not going to look at your tax squad automatically 20 extra, maybe 30 extra on that. So, all right. Anything else, gentlemen, before we close it out on these 2 Rites of War?
This one already supplements a pretty good Legion, in my opinion.
If you're running this
is a
Legion
good
and you want to
supplement or
run
good
them
Legion.
the way that they kind of look, this is a perfect fit for that. All right. We will call it for the Emperor's Children.